Yes, guys, how you doing? Welcome back to the Spurs Talk Show. I am Sean Butler. I hope you're all happy and healthy doing the things you love with those that you love doing them with. I'm out, it's raining, it's horrible. I done my hair this morning after yesterday's comment section. Don't worry, I watch every single one of you calling me all sorts of names under the sun about my haircut. I went and got my haircut and it was done up, but I've just been rained upon, so now it looks terrible. What can you do? I'm 40, things are falling out. It is what it is. Guys, we've got a lot to get through, so I'm not gonna mess around today. Please do me a favor, hit the like button for me on the video if you don't mind, if you enjoy the content, of course. And yesterday I asked for 1,000 likes because, I mean, that's what I've come to expect in the last 10 videos from people that are so generous with their support of the channel, and I really appreciate it. In the end, we got like 1,500 likes. So, I mean, unbelievable stuff. You're blowing my mind, people. I really, really appreciate it. Hit the subscribe if you're new around here. We're on the march now to whatever the next target is, 30K, I guess. Hit the notification bell so you can see the content first, and drop comments. And do drop a comment. Always tell me how you feel. You know, like I said recently, this channel is not about trying to shape your opinion. I'm not trying to force my opinion on you. I am trying to give you what's in the news, and I will do my best to analyze it and tell you this side of the coin, that side of the coin, here's where I land, but I'm more interested in what your thoughts are. And I read every single comment, and so many of them influence how I feel, so please keep them coming. Right, let's get straight into it, the boring news, but actually it's quite cool. Tottenham have announced 2 friendlies this week to UK teams. Great to see, going back to the old days. First of all, we've got Hearts on the 17th of July away in Scotland. Very cool to go and play up there. I might try and get a ticket for that one. On July the 20th, we've got Queen's Park Rangers at Loftus Road. Another cool thing. I used to remember when we used to go and play the likes of Barnet and Leyton Orient and that. It was always great to play the local teams. More competitive, I think, than kind of behind the closed doors friendlies and sometimes some of these overseas tours, although I understand the value of the tour. But sometimes some local games is cool too. That happens on the 20th of July, and then we fly off to Japan on the 22nd, so expect some different squads being put in there. Next story, Bryan Hill. Basically, Seville want him. They've asked him to be patient and Tottenham to be patient as they try to figure out the way to get the money together, and 10 million is the number that seems to be a somewhat agreed upon figure in principle. They just don't have the numbers yet. Maybe that would mean that they have to wait until the next financial year. I don't know if the Spanish financial year, excuse me, sorry, you've lost me, works the same way if June the 30th, July the 1st is the overlay. What's going to be interesting though, oh, there's Bugsy. What's going to be interesting is if we can get it done, and whether or not the fact that it's going to be delayed means that we have to delay other transfers. We spoke all week now about the TIMO Werner thing. And I think the more and more I think about it, the more and more it makes sense, because he would be the natural replacement for Bryan Hill in our squad, the sort of 7th winger, the 6th winger, or 6th forward. And it looks like the total fee we're going to be playing is around 14 million, or wages and the loan fee in total, which seems like a lot of money. But the narrative for me is that not only does it buy you a year of a top player that's an improvement on what we have, if he can improve his GA output, then it will certainly be worth it. We'll see what happens. But on top of that, there's quotes out from Dan Kilpatrick that add a little bit more value to the narrative. The value proposition makes a little bit more sense. He had a conversation with Simon Davies, who's one of the youth team guys, who said that Ange is all about love. He loves playing young players. He knows how important it is for the Tottenham team, the Tottenham fans, to want to see 3 or 4 of their own playing in the team. He wants to play them, but only when they're ready, and a lot of them aren't ready yet. He outlined, or sorry, John Wenham the other day on Last Word on Spurs outlined the process and the, you know, and the structure of what's likely to happen with regard to someone like Mikey Moore. You know, they've got to go through the youth team contract process 2 years. Then as soon as they can, they'll up the contract, extend it with more money, and then when he turns 18, he'll get his first 17 professional contract, and then it will go into 5-year deal sort of thing where you get a bit more money. So we're going to go through the process that we have to, and we hope we can keep hold of him and pay him what he's worth or whatever. But in terms of the rest of them, Simon Davies is saying most of them aren't ready yet. And so that again brings in the logic, right? If you're not a fan of the Timo Werner deal, that's fine, I get it. But here's the logic that I'd like you to consider. If you didn't want Timo, but Timo is only seen as a squad player, then the alternative was to find another player on loan, which I don't think you'll find that easily of the same quality as Timo Werner. And if you didn't want that, if you'd rather Tottenham went out and bought a squad player to come in the rotation player to come in on a permanent deal, then you'd have to be signing him for 4 or 5 years. And the likelihood is that that would become a he's deadwood in a 1.5 year time conversation. So it makes sense, especially if what Simon Davies is alluding to with regards to Ange Postecoglou's thoughts, I want to play these youth players, but they're not ready yet. Will Lancashire, not ready yet. Dane Scarlett, not ready yet. Maybe Troy Parrott, not ready yet. Certainly Mikey Moore and Jamie Donnelly, not ready yet. Santiago, is he ready? The guy's 22 years old. Is he ever going to be ready? I'm not sure. You have to ask other people that are more closer to the topic of under 21 knowledge than me to figure it out. But you can understand the notion that in a year's time they might be ready, and therefore signing a player like Timo Werner is a stopgap for now that hopefully will prove valuable anyway in a season that's busy with Europa League, additional fixtures, blah, 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 and the likely injuries that we're going to get. I think it makes sense even more sense now that you think that maybe what we're doing here is biding time for the pathway. Because there was an argument that signing Timo Werner blocks the path for the young. And I'm saying, actually, when you think about it, maybe the pathway isn't ready yet. And so Timo Werner is kind of taking us down another path whilst the pathway is being built for next year. And eventually we'll get back to that pathway. We're taking a detour for a year, but then the pathway will be there when they are ready. Let's move on. Dan Kilpatrick's also said Piere Emile Hojbjerg and Gio Lo Celso are definitely going to leave the club this summer as long as the right bids can be found. Hojbjerg, as we know, is probably going to go to Atletico Madrid or to Spain at least, because the Juve deal looks under doubt because of Thiago Motta's move from Bologna to Juve, and he's got other intentions in mind. Sorry about that. And in terms of Lo Celso, it looks like Real Betis is probably the most likely destination, although whether they have the money and how much money we're talking about here remains to be seen. As I always say, second-tier teams buying second-tier players, they only have second-tier money. So it depends what Daniel Levy et al. Value these players at, and will they accept some sort of structure to it that might not necessarily be in the best interest of Tottenham's ability to add to whatever our current budget is, to make our net budget a lot bigger. Richarlison, let's move on. Richarlison, obviously this week has come out and said, whatever the noise was in Brazil, it's fake news. I don't want to leave. I'm not leaving. The rumours to Saudi Arabia are not true. I'm not leaving England, is what he said. He didn't say I'm not leaving Tottenham. He said I'll be playing in England next year. Now, for me, that is a interesting kind of insight. First and foremost, Dan Kilpatrick is also saying that despite, was it Dan Kilpatrick who said that? Yeah, Dan Kilpatrick saying, despite Richie's comments, Tottenham are still willing to listen to offers for Richarlison. Now, again, I always say this, 3 people need to be on board a deal for a player. You need the player to be on board, the buying club and the selling club. All of them have to agree. Even if Saudi Arabia were to come in with a £50 million bid and Tottenham want to take it, maybe you can infer from that Tottenham are still looking, if it's true what Dan Kilpatrick's saying, it's true that Tottenham are still willing to listen to offers, then maybe you can infer that Richarlison is not a player that Ange particularly wants. Maybe it's because of his volatile mental kind of situation. Maybe it's because of his frequency in which he's happy to talk about Tottenham to Portuguese media or to people in Portugal, and that stuff gets back to the club and it doesn't necessarily jive well with people at the club. And maybe there's just a kind of concern that you give this guy playing time and he's happy, but when he doesn't get playing time, he's unhappy, and he's not good enough to spearhead our attack next year. So if you bring in someone better and he's playing second fiddle, then you regress back to a time where you have an unhappy Richarlison. And an unhappy Richarlison, it's almost the same as an injured Richarlison, which is a Richarlison that doesn't do the business. And that may result in Tottenham wanting him to leave. However, if he doesn't want to go, then you can't force him. And if he's saying he wants to stay in England, rather than saying Tottenham specifically, then maybe what he's really saying is, I want to get back into the Brazil team, I want to be playing in the 2026 World Cup, and in order for me to do that, I need to be playing at a top club in a top league, and so England is where he wants to be. Now, I'll promise you this, I don't think that any club in England will give the same money that you could have got for a Saudi Arabian bid. Saudi Arabians will happily pay what they want to pay, and if you can't convince a guy on money alone, because he's got other ambitions and he's seen what happened with players like Jordan Henderson who went out to Saudi Arabia, they lost their space in the England squad, then maybe he's thinking more about the longer term with his Brazil team and wants to stay in England. Now, where do you go then to find a club in England that's going to suit Richarlison and have got the money to make the transfer worthwhile? It's worthwhile selling Richarlison at 55 million quid, of course it is. Is it worth selling him for 25 million quid, which is probably the value that he really is, given his performance over the last 2 years for Tottenham, maybe 30 million quid? Who in the Premier League has got that money? Not many. Certainly none of the top 4 teams want him. And so the teams below, a lot of them are struggling with FFP. How are they going to make it work? Well, look, the only kind of natural thing I could think of here is potentially an Ivan Toney Richarlison swap deal. Now, swap deals generally, cash plus swap deals, are incredibly difficult to do. You've got so many third parties that are involved. You've got the agents of both players, you've got both buying clubs and selling clubs, the valuation realizations of each player, who's valued at more, and so who should be paying the cash. And with the Toney situation, with his contract running down and Richarlison's value as a player and his international status, it will be an interesting negotiation to see who will be paying more, who values which player at what level, and it becomes very complex. That's why these things happen so rarely. However, we saw one last year to a degree. It was in a different format, a different structure, but with James Maddison and Harry Winks, they were dealt with as different transfers. But they essentially were a player plus cash swap deal for Maddison, involving Winks. And, you know, it might happen again, just in a weird structure. And when you think about it, you go, well, does that make sense for all parties? Well, there's the added bonus from the players of not having to move home. Brentford's not that far from Tottenham, West London to North London. Ivan Toney apparently would be willing to come to Tottenham and play under Ange. Richarlison would be staying in the Premier League. Brentford are a good team under a good manager that, you know, just need a little bit more juice, a little bit better luck with injuries, and maybe they're going to need to replace Toney. So maybe there's just a method to that madness that could be investigated. I don't know, I'm massively speculating, but it's the only scenario where I can see us selling Richarlison and getting a kind of player in return that would fit our system, even though I know he's not perfect for the reasons we've spoken about for ages. And there's lots of risk with Toney, and I know a lot of you don't fancy it. I personally do, but that to me is a scenario that could play out. I think that there's value on both sides to sort that whole situation. So we shall see. Now let's talk about some quotes for some players. Ange Postecoglou's quotes around Tottenham fans expect their players to put in 100% effort, and they love it when they see their players, and they demand it, they command it, and they absolutely appreciate it when they say it, when they see it. And from that, he said, if that's what they want, then over the next couple of years, I'm paraphrasing, I'll put the phrase up so you can see it, they will be proud. Now listen, does that mean trophies? Well, you hope so. He seems to me to like he knows he's going to be here not just for next season but the season after. And so, as I've already said, that incentivisation to playing youth team, maybe there's something that's baked into his contract, or if there isn't, there should be a way to protect him from the risk of playing young players, but ultimately give the fans a bit of what they want, not just effort but also home, like seeing one of your owns coming through, and hopefully all of that can compound on itself and materialise in ways that keep us fans happy, which, you know, is a rarity. It's a rarity in our fan base at the moment, isn't it? Let's move on to Christian Romero's quotes. He was talking all about offers that come his way and an analysis of them. He said, yes, I get a lot of offers that come across my desk. Again, I'm paraphrasing. He goes, I consider them all. Of course, it would be silly not to, but right now I'm happy, but I'm entirely focused on Argentina. Now, to me, I hope that he's saying about the Argentina thing, it's 100% clear to me that this guy is country before club. Totally get it. He is a South American. They all are. They all care more about playing for their country than they do their clubs. I totally respect it. I get it. And I gave Romero a hard time pre-World Cup because I thought he was kind of, I don't know, a bit work shy, shall we say, in the weeks leading up to the World Cup to get prepared for it. And then he went there and won the World Cup. And I held it against him last season, or season before last. In the season that's just finished, though, I saw a different side to him. I saw one that has matured under the leadership kind of banner that he's been given. He calmed himself down. Even the Chelsea sending off, I don't think that was fair anyway. So I think he's just matured. as a footballer, and I absolutely adore him. Now, I don't hold these quotes against him because I'm presuming that he's talking about what he's saying from Argentina in front of the Argentinian press ahead of the Copa America and whatever friendlies they're playing at the moment. And so, you know, he's talking to his audience. So I'm not going to hold that one against him, but it's interesting that he says that he gets a lot of offers. He analyses them all, but right now he's happy where he is and the interest is not there and he's all about Argentina, which is fine. It makes you wonder though, what is the process of how offers start from one club? Because I was always under the impression that you can't tap a player up, and surely, you know, going to an agent before you go to a club or going to the player before you go to a club is the equivalent of tapping players up. So Alex Ferguson was in trouble for doing it. I'm guessing it happens all the time anyway. I'm guessing we're naive to think it doesn't. And maybe actually it makes sense that a club, before they go through the process of reaching out to another club and say, hey, I want your player, they might as well at least feel out via the agent if there's any interest, to stop everybody wasting their time if there really isn't. Anyway, that's Romero's quotes. Good luck to him in the Copa America. I think Argentina will win it again. Next up is a transfer story, guys. Davide Fratesi from Inter Milan. I'm not going to give you too much on this one. First of all, the Y Scout tour was down this morning, so I couldn't go through my usual process. 32 games played, 6 goals, 4 assists from a midfielder. In terms of the stats, I'll throw them on the screen very, very quickly for you. It's a weird one because I don't really know the player too well. He has been at Sassuolo. He's from Sassuolo, been at Inter on loan. That deal was then made permanent just recently for 29 million euros. And all the links are saying that Tottenham are interested in him as part of a kind of swap deal or whatever, or part of a potential deal for Emerson Royal. But the actual links with Emerson Royal were for AC Milan, not Inter. And we know that Emerson Royal's agents are in Milan, so maybe they're talking to both. But the Fratesi deal, not sure it makes a lot of sense for me. He's just signed for Inter on a permanent deal, and he spoke about his frustration of not getting too many minutes. I looked up and saw his quotes about the guy. Apparently he's played 1,600 minutes this season, which isn't a lot over 32 games, but he's on loan. He says he understands it's part of the process of setting yourself up and settling in to life at a new place. So this notion that he would leave, I think, is just woeful. In terms of the stats, it's weird because as a midfielder, his passing stats look terrible, but his output, his G, his A, all that stuff, his shot creating actions are all right up there. So it looks like he's being compared to all midfielders that might maybe are more kind of defensive or kind of just structural in nature, being in the middle of the park, yet he maybe plays further up the field. But as I say, I'm not too familiar with the player. But I'll do some research. If the stories continue to heat up on it, I'll do my Y Scout tool and I'll come back to you. Let's move on. Josh Hughes from the Daily Mail, the young lad who works for the Daily Mail. You often see him on some of the different YouTube channels. He was talking about Eberechi Eze, and he was given the same sort of vibes, the same sort of Baba, over here. The same sort of justification as why it makes sense. Talking about CAA, the shared agent, friends, they've got a box, lots of wining and dining, and that he said, I don't want to get myself in trouble here, but I think this one makes the most sense. So I think what I'm going to take from this is that he's talking from opinion, not something from his work source that he knows about. He's just putting 2 and 2 together like we all have and say that we think it makes sense. And obviously he would be a dream signing. And for me, if we got him in, that would certainly perk everybody up a little bit, because right now the fan base is so split that we need a little bit of something we can all get behind. And Eze as a signing, I think, would do that. Dan Bardell from The Sun has said that Gallagher would likely reject Tottenham Hotspur should a move come in. Now, he's talking about the fact that, you know, Gallagher is a Chelsea through and through, and whilst the fan base is split at Chelsea on Gallagher, you know, some of them love him because he's Chelsea through and through and value his effort, value his hard work. The other half, and I say half, I don't know what percentage, but the other half of the fan base recognise that he's imperfect and, you know, slightly, well, they see the weaknesses in his game and would be happy to move him on. But they probably would rather he didn't come to Tottenham in any event. Tottenham are the only team that are really linked with him in the Premier League. And Chelsea obviously need to sell from an FFP and a PSR perspective. But the argument that Dan Bardell is putting out is that that's not Conor Gallagher's problem, and that he'd be better off rejecting a move, running his contract down if no one else comes in to buy him, and then having the pick of everywhere on a free transfer next year, which does make sense. Chelsea haven't really seen that too many bids or too much interest coming from other clubs in the Premier League. And the English tax is a thing here, which is what Tottenham would have to consider and have to kind of to include in their valuation. And overseas clubs aren't going to benefit from that. So are you going to see an overseas club compete with Tottenham or anyone else in the Premier League on the valuation when they have to bake in English tax and the other foreign teams don't? The answer is probably not. So it's going to be a fascinating encounter to see if Gallagher does reject Tottenham because of his roots and says, you know what, I'll just run my contract down. Then what else do Chelsea do? Well, they'll have to move to other players that are homegrown, that come through their academy, to be able to get that right side of FFP. Remember, it's the last year, this year, of £105 million loss-based accounting. And so they have to get their accounts right before June the 30th. And if not Conor Gallagher, then who else can they go to? Well, they've got Trevor Chalobah, and I think Ian Maatsen, I think, is also someone who's playing over in Germany, but he's someone as well that can help. If not, maybe they've got other young players that they've signed. They went on a massive mission of signing young 17, 18-year-olds, and maybe they can sell a few of those that potentially have been on loan or whatever, have demonstrated some value, and that money can come in and help out their FFP situation. Not entirely sure, we will find out. The Chelsea FFP story, though, the PSR story, it's one of these stories where, you know, everybody and their dog seems to think that Chelsea are screwed, not just from their FFP now, but also from the rules that they potentially have broken in the past with regarding Roman Abramovich's assistant, who was getting paid money in the form of houses, and the loans had debt forgiveness, and all of that stuff was in a breach, a data breach hack that, you know, kind of alerted the world to it. So everybody who's not Chelsea seems to think that Chelsea have got a ticking time bomb on their hands. But yet within Chelsea, there doesn't seem to be any concern about PSR, and the Chelsea ITKs on Twitter seem to think that Chelsea's big top brass think they're absolutely fine, even to the point that they've now qualified for Europe, and they'd have to adhere not only to the £105 million loss-based accounting, but also to the 80% squad spend ratio rules, which, again, is an additional consideration, additional pressure, and everyone thinks that that's a problem for them, apart from Chelsea insiders. Fascinating to see what will happen there. I still think that Tottenham will put in a bid for Conor Gallagher. I expect him to come in. One thing I would say, guys, on the Conor Gallagher story is that we heard yesterday that Chelsea are actually looking at Eberechi Eze. And so what would be absolutely unforgivable in my mind is that, given that Tottenham really want Eberechi Eze, is that if we signed Conor Gallagher before June the 30th to allow them to use that money as pure profit, to then be able to kick the can down the road, get out of jail for this last year of PSR as it currently sits, and then on July the 1st, Chelsea then have enough money or enough willingness from the owners to go and put on more debt onto the club to spend more money on a player like Eze, who Tottenham would be going after. So not only in that situation would we be helping Chelsea out of an FFP problem, but we would also be allowing them to compete with us for what we could possibly consider our top target this year. So I don't want that to happen in any way, shape or form. So what I would like to see, if Ange is desperate to get Conor Gallagher, and as I say, you've got to back Ange, he knows his system, what he wants, I'm happy for him to do. I'm happy for him to get. If he really likes Conor Gallagher, absolutely fine. But if he also really likes Eberechi Eze, then how about we go and get Eberechi Eze first, and then once that's done, so that we know Chelsea can't compete with us, then we go and hardball Conor Gallagher and get that one done on June the 30th for 25 million quid. Let's see how desperate Chelsea really are. And, you know, that will be the best way around it. And then a midfield next year of, like, with Pape Sarr in it, Conor Gallagher, Eberechi Eze, James Maddison, Bentancur, you know, maybe Bissouma's gone by then, Hojbjerg might be gone by then, whatever. But that, to me, sounds like a really nice, juicy midfield with lots of options. It'll be fascinating to see how it goes. I just worry that we're going to not only help out Chelsea out of the FFP problem, we're also going to then allow them to become a competitor in the race to sign the player that we all really want. So I'm not okay with that. So be smart here, Tottenham. Be very, very smart. Let me turn over the last few stories for you guys. Jean-Claire Todibo has come out and said that he is open to a Premier League move. He's happy where he is, but he knows the game, he knows what's going to happen, and a Premier League move is very much open. He's very much open to. Tottenham are linked with him. I'd love to see him at Tottenham. I think he's a brilliant player, one for the future, one for the present. One is going to be one of the best defenders in the world, in my opinion, if he continues on his track. Unfortunately, Manchester United, I think, have probably earmarked him, and the relationship between Nice and United is Sir Jim Ratcliffe. He owns 100% of Nice. He currently owns 25% of Manchester United. But Manchester United, for all of their money, all of their brand, all of their revenue, remember, their FFP situation last year was in such a bad way that they struggled to get the Amrabat deal done, and in the end had to pay a massive loan fee temporarily so they could kick the can down the road to make that move permanent, or probably permanent, this summer. And so, you know, like Icarus, they've flown a little bit too close to the sun, even though they are a monster. And on that basis, do they have the money really to spend 40, 50 million quid on Jean-Claire Todibo? Well, possibly, possibly not. You know, they've got the new owners. It's not clear yet whether or not how much of that money has gone back to the Glazers and taken out of the club, how much of it is staying in the club, is earmarked for, you know, Old Trafford's refurbishment, how much of it is earmarked for transfers. Don't know, won't know, can't tell you. But what I wouldn't put beyond the realms of possibility is to see something happen akin to what happened between Benjamin Sesko when he left Salzburg and went to Leipzig. He went there for £25 million, but Leipzig or Salzburg turned down a bid from Manchester United allegedly for £50 million, which again is a demonstration that this multi-club ownership thing is okay as long as there's no clear conflicts of interest. The Sesko deal proves it's a load of waffle, it's a load of nonsense. Would Manchester United be able to buy Jean-Claire Todibo at a fraction of his true market value? Possibly. Would the Nice fans be okay with that? I'm not sure. Nice, French people love a protest. We saw what happened when Bill Foley's Bournemouth team years ago tried to buy Lorient. They didn't want to play second fiddle to an English team in any way, shape or form, and they nearly tore down the stadium in protest. Would Nice be okay? Like Salzburg's fans were okay with Sesko going for 25 million quid, and Salzburg were like, all right, well, we'll just take 25 million quid to rebuild our squad rather than the 50 we could have got. It seems okay to them for whatever reason. I'm not sure it would be okay with the French fans to see Manchester United benefit. Would Sir Jim Ratcliffe, he's 100% owner of Nice, would he be okay doing that and only being part of the 25% valuation of United at this stage? Obviously, he has ambitions to take over the club entirely. And more than that, you know, there is a situation where, yeah, I guess he's just going to look at Manchester United as a value proposition and see that there's a lot more in the way of sort of growth in the future from United than there is from Nice. Last couple of stories, guys. Archie Gray is being linked with Tottenham again. The Rodon deal, Leeds United are in financial problems. Not getting into the Premier League has really hurt them. Remember, I'm pretty sure Leeds United's owner used Ellen Road as collateral to finance the purchase of an Italian team, which went down like a pint of warm sick. I'm not entirely sure or entirely over the Leeds United financial situation, but they want Joe Rodon. We're apparently linked to Archie Gray. Interestingly, the idea would be to use Archie Gray as a backup right back. Even though he's a midfielder, he demonstrates all of the ability to be able to merge to a right back, especially in this system. Don't forget, our system means that our right back and left back actually have to be more like midfielders in the triple pivot six, or however you want to think of it. So that's the Archie Gray link. Whether it comes true or not, we'll wait and see. I'll update you on the story as we go. And the last story for you is Jed Spence to Genoa. He is wanted by Genoa. He's obviously been on loan there, and there was, I think it was a 10 million euro or 11 million euro option to buy. They want him, but they don't want to pay the option trigger price. When was the last time any team that had a loan with an option actually triggered the option for a player that has only done okay there? Generally speaking, the option is only ever triggered at the option price if the performance of the player has raised the valuation to be so much higher than that they're getting the player at the option trigger discount. In most of the time, these players will do okay, and then if the team does want to make the deal permanent, then they'll go back to the drawing board and negotiate. Tottenham did it with Timo Werner, for example. So I don't know what the number is for Jed Spence. Let me know what you think. I think if Tottenham would accept a 5 or 6 million euro, if that's what's affordable to Genoa, then so be it. As long as we could slide in like a 15% sell-on fee, just on the off chance that Jed Spence does become a very good player, although I don't particularly hold much hope. The reason why Genoa are probably in financial distress, I've spoken about this loads of times, guys, is 777 Partners. They are owned by 777 Partners, the same people who own Everton, the same people who are in bed with MSP Capital, other multi-club ownership groups. As I say, for those of you that are Levy out, that believe that Levy out is the problem, who is the solution? And when you look through the various private equity and venture capital firms and the multi-club ownership groups that are out there, you see there's a lot of entanglement, a lot of webs of investment that all overlay each other, and it's a bit of a house of cards. If one of them, 777 Partners, for example, are a giant Ponzi scheme, as has been suggested and alleged in hundreds of lawsuits across the country, across the world in fact, then if that whole thing comes tumbling down, that will affect Everton, that will affect Hertha Berlin, that will affect Standard Liège, that will affect Genoa, who apparently have got all the money they will find. Maybe they're not, maybe they're not. That's why they haven't got the money to pay for Jed Spence after all. It will also affect MSP Capital. MSP Capital have got, because they've already put 200 million quid into the Everton situation via 777. MSP Capital have got 7 or 8 different clubs around Europe. As I say, kind of like the banking crisis, one thing falls, a lot of others get caught up in it. So those of you who say anyone but Levy will do, be careful what you wish for. You need to do your due diligence. You need to go and work out, of the various options that are out there, who can you have confidence in that are going to come in, do a better job than Levy, and also not jeopardise the financial sustainability of the football club via dodgy prior investments. And to me, I've identified a few that I'd be happy with. But when that noise comes, when the next story breaks around some person, some entity is interested in Tottenham Hotspur, investing in Tottenham Hotspur, I will do my due diligence at the time. And if it's a good idea, I will tell you. If it's a bad idea, I will tell you how I see it. But I'm also interested in how you see it. And so if you are massively interested in that story, if you are invested in the Levy out thing, I would encourage you to go and do some homework on the owners of different football clubs, the owners of multi-club ownership. Who are the investors? Clear Lake Capitals, those type of guys. There's not that many PIF funds left. There's not that many sovereign states out there that can invest in a football club in England that haven't already got interest in other football clubs. So, you know, there's pros and cons to them all. But we'll talk about, 32 minutes. I'm sorry, guys. I'll roll it off there. Hope it was an okay one. Hit the like, subscribe, and comment. Bugsy says, sayonara. And I do too. Bye.